nodding of the heads? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, everyone, we will start our meeting and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. For those who are able to stand, would you please stand with me and I will lead the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much. Lynette, would you please do the roll call?
Thank you. Yes, we'll start with our board members and then we'll move to our external members. Director Bulahan. Absent. Desmond.
Here.
Gallardo.
Here.
Gog.
Yes.
Guerrero. Absent. Lauren.
Here.
Zaragoza. Absent. Vice Chair Soon. Absent. Chair Jennings.
Here.
And Director Harris is absent. Moving to our external members, Ami Barnes.
Present.
Woody Deloria.
I'm here.
Elisa Herrera.
Here.
Maria Chacon-Nistet.
Here.
Marco Lizarraga.
Here.
William Walker.
Here.
Shante Arroyo. Absent. Kendra Lewis. Absent. Raul Martinez. Absent. And Christine Tien, absent. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a quorum and I'm hopeful that some of those who are absent will be late and they will join us a little bit later. Okay, Lynette, is there any public communication on items not on the agenda?
There is no public comment.
Okay. So at this point in time, should we take up the consent calendar?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there anything anybody would like to discuss that's on the consent calendar? And if not, I would take a motion.
Move to approve the consent.
I have a motion
Second, Desmond.
and I have a second. Do we need to take roll call or can we take all in favor?
We do need to take a roll call.
All right, let's do the roll call vote then.
Thank you. Director Bulahan. Absent. Desmond.
Aye.
Gallardo.
Aye.
Gog.
Yes.
Guerrero. Absent. Harris. Absent. Lauren. Director Lauren, can you indicate your vote? I see you on screen.
Yes.
Thank you. Zaragoza. Absent. Vice Chair Soon. Chair Jennings.
Here.
Ami Barnes. Oh, sorry. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Ami Barnes.
Yes.
Shante Arroyo. Absent. Woody Deloria.
Yes.
Elisa Herrera.
Yes.
Kendra Lewis. Absent. Maria Chacon-Nistet.
Yes.
Raul Martinez. Absent. Marco Lizarraga.
Here.
Is that a yes vote? Mr. Lizarraga? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Christine Tien, absent, and William Walker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We will now move to our information items and I just want to welcome you all. I missed the last meeting and I deeply apologize for the busy schedule that I have and not making that meeting. But I heard my vice chair Soon did an incredible job. And many of you called me to let me know what a great job he did. And so just want to thank him for doing that. And sorry he couldn't be with us today. But I also just want to welcome each of you and thank you for being here for this meeting on this day, on a Thursday, the weekend before we get ready for the 4th of July. And I just want to thank you for that, for being here and being here on time. And so we have a full agenda in front of us. But I just wanted to stop for a second and thank you. I dealt with a personal issue with my mother-in-law, who's 94, and she fell on an uneven sidewalk. And so we've been dealing with that and spending a lot of time helping her to get healthy again, changing her whole house around so that she can move with comfort. And so, and spending the nights over there, she's trying to kick us out of her house now. So that means she's on the mend, she's getting healthy. But a lot of my time has been spent just making sure that the matriarch of our family is healthy and moving in the right direction. So I appreciate all the thoughts and the words of encouragement and the prayers that you've given my family in that regard. But we're gonna get back to our meeting right now. But once again, thank you for being here for this working group. This is a very important working group, as you all know. And we've got a meeting today that's going to go from approximately 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock unless we get done early. So with that, my job is to welcome you, settle you in. I felt like we did that prior to the meeting and the Pledge of Allegiance, getting settled in with the small talk. But just wanted to welcome you. Thank you for taking time to spend time with us today. And I know that this is a meeting that we will all benefit from. And with that, I'm gonna turn the meeting over for an intro and an overview, and I'm gonna give it to Danielle.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see? Oh, not the whole thing. Hold on. There we go. That's better. All right. You see my screen? Okay. It's good to see you all again. Thank you for having me. I love to spend time with this group. Very excited for our conversation today and the progress that we'll be making. Wanted to share briefly the outcomes that we hope to accomplish during our time. The first one being that working group members have had an opportunity to discuss and as a group have reviewed and provided feedback on the proposed regional indicators, which are a key part of understanding what progress and success looks like for SACOG's Racial Equity Action Plan. So this feels like really timely and important step. We want you to ensure that you are clear on the status of where the REAP is currently, what's been implemented thus far. And the third bullet there is how might you be engaged in the coming weeks and months to continue this progress moving forward. And so that is our game plan for today. Let me move us to our agenda. Here's how we'll accomplish it. We're already 2 bullets down, so great progress here. In a moment, I'll kick it back over to Chair Jennings to do an opening activity with us. We always like to get the conversation flowing and learn more about one another. I'll give a brief overcap of what has happened since our last meeting. We had a discussion on Tuesday, discussion session on Tuesday that I'll give a brief overview to. Then I'm going to hand it over to SACOG staff to both present on the regional indicators and some progress on implementation thus far. And then we will wrap up. So that is our agenda. And I will also review our community agreements and shared values. So these were the values that we lifted up together. We've got openness, learning, humor, leadership, humility, curiosity, contribution, compassion, poise, reflection, and knowledge as core to the way that we enter into this space. A reminder of our community agreements that we co-created. No one knows everything. We all have something to learn and to offer. Move up and move up so that everyone is able to contribute. So if you're someone who tends to not speak up, this is an opportunity for you to move up and speak. If you're someone who tends to hang back, this is an opportunity for you to move up your listening. We hope that you come prepared and present and able to participate. We want to ensure that we practice authenticity in these conversations. We want to accept and expect non-closure. These meetings are long, but also very short. And we have plenty of time to continue to build brick by brick every time. Lifting up the point of intersectionality and the difference between intent and impact. And so the importance of our own experiences, our own identities, as well as the identities and experiences of our constituents. And then also recognizing that while our intentions may be the best and may be coming from the right place, impact still happens, and sometimes that impact is negative. And so ensuring that we remain cognizant of the impact that we have, which also extends to practicing self-awareness and also giving yourself grace and compassion, as well as extending that to your colleagues on this call and beyond. With that, I'll hand it back over to you, Chair Jennings, to kick us off in our opening activity.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you saw in our building blocks, I think you saw several words that were in there, but the one that resonated the most with me today was leadership. And the exercise that we have for you today is, you know, all of us are in positions of leadership in some capacity or the other, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, in our church, in our community. You know, we're in some form of leadership, and I just need to understand, and I think it will benefit all of us in understanding what are the key characteristics, skills, or approaches of leaders that you admire, and what maybe is an unexpected skill or characteristic that you believe is important in being a leader. You know, what have you seen in leaders that you admire that you want to take for yourself and add it to your resume of skills of skills? And so I just want to kind of get you thinking for a second on leadership and what does it mean to you, right? Am I explaining that clearly so that you understand what I'm asking for? And it can be a statement, it can be a sentence, it can be a one word. It's like, what do you look for in a leader? What are the characteristics that you look for in a leader, right? What are the skills and approaches that a leader has that you admire the most? What does leadership mean to you? So it's just an open conversation to get us warmed up and get going. You know, in football, we used to have to warm up for 25 minutes before we started practice, right? Because we wanted to warm the body up. So this way I want to kind of warm the mind up a little bit. And I see some of you thinking, I can see the hand on the chin. I can see the ink pen working, and just what leadership approaches work for you? What skills? What are you thinking of? And Lynette, you're gonna have to help me with because I can't see everybody on my screen. So you have to help me with anybody's hand that's up that I can't see.
Will do. Looks like Elisa.
Rich, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Okay, go ahead. All right. See, I'm coming back at you, Rich. So go ahead. Elisa?
I'm inspired by people who don't have an ego and who lift others up, even if it means they will be above themselves. So inspiring others, lifting them, and not talking about keeping titles or positions, but bringing people up and above and just getting the best out of them that they can. But it all starts with no ego.
Should I just
like
go
that.
to share?
Yes, please.
I think it's kind of a cliche, I guess, about leadership, but I think it is an important one, and it's withstood the test of time because it really resonates. Is that a leader should never ask someone to do something that the leader is not willing to do themselves, and I think that's important from a number of perspectives. That's how I think you generate trust. That's how, by doing and being willing to do the jobs that others do, you're willing to expose yourself to experiences that they have, and that in turn generates empathy and understanding for the challenges that people face. So I think that adage that a leader should never ask someone to do something that leader is not willing to do, him or herself, is an important one.
I like that. Marco, I see your hand, so I'm gonna call on you.
Okay. Excuse me. I think openness is one thing, and acceptance. Accept the different opinions and different views, and also accept one thing: you don't know it all, and you cannot do it all. Be able to accept that you need assistance, and be able to evaluate those who can assist you in which direction you want to go, and you have an idea of the direction you want to go. Have that confidence level that is transmissible to everybody, to be able to bring them into a team effort for the goal you want, understanding that you cannot do it alone.
I like that. Thank you, Marco. Lynette, you see somebody I can't see?
Let's see. No other hands raised yet.
I'll go.
I got you, guy. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Being a leader, I believe that you should have a understanding of what you're applying for as a leader. You have to be sort of a open-minded person where you can listen to anything that anybody comes up and be trustworthy, be honest, have a vision for the cause that you're being a leader for, have a courage to continue doing what's necessary to make you a good leader. Humility, you have to, like somebody else already mentioned, that you have to control your ego. And I think if you can control your ego, and you can be a pretty good leader. That's one of the biggest reason a lot of people fail in leadership is because their ego is bigger than their leadership role. And I'll stop there. Thank you, Chair.
I like that. I like that. I like that. Who else? I see you, Jesse.
All right, I'm going to say that I think being a leader requires virtue and values for yourself and others, but coming into a room clean, in that the openness isn't going to trigger you because you're ready. You're ready from the inside out to receive where people are and to champion their growth. So coming in kind of clean, coming in ready, like you've done some self-work, you've put some stuff away, you're ready to move forward clean.
I like that. I haven't heard it voiced that way, but I like that. Anyone
Mr.
else?
Chair, Mr. Chair, it's Jill. I'll jump in.
Okay.
So I think what I've found is so crucial to me is understanding people. That's the listening and understanding and figuring out how to connect them. And I always think about how struck I was by Father Ted Hesburgh from University of Notre Dame when he was on the Civil Rights Commission, and he came with Dr. Martin and they act trying to get his language and just coming to agreement. And he took fish, and when asked how he was able to get this done, he said, I take 6 individuals, I took 6 fishermen. I think that's trying to realize if I can find common people, I can make a and connect.
Director Gallardo, this is Lynette. We were having a difficult time hearing you. I'm worried that your connection might be not great right now. If you'd like to send me an email with that thought, I'd be happy to read it for you if that's okay with Chair Jennings.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that somebody is capturing all this good information so that we can then turn around and send it out to everybody. So I'm hoping all of it's being captured. Is that happening?
It's happening.
I'm trying to write it down, but I'm running out of space on my sheet of paper.
It's happening. Yes.
Good. Because I definitely want this to go back out. Anyone else?
Chair Jennings, I wanted to jump in. As I was
Okay.
listening to everyone's contributions, I was thinking how the foundation of all of these things, it feels like might be courage. It takes courage to walk into a room and set your ego aside. It takes a lot of courage to be open and accept others' points of view. It takes a lot of courage to be open-minded. Not think that you have all the answers, and it takes courage to stand up and say, this is what I believe, to take a point of view. So I would say, I think leadership is courage, but in a lot of different ways.
I love that, Maria. I absolutely love that because I hear the courage clearly, and it takes courage even to stand up for your point of view that may not be popular when you're presenting it, right? And so it takes courage to be able to do that. And I think that's a part of that whole courage set that you're talking about. That's great. Who else that I can't see? Anybody? I'm gonna give you mine just very quickly then, if that's the case, if there's no one else. I would try to build on everything that you've said so far. I have a strong belief that we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. I think it was very intentional. And that is, we are to listen twice as much as we talk. And when we start listening to the people around us, it gives us the opportunity to learn and then really express our positions of leadership, that your leadership position didn't just come from yourself, but it came from the people who you represent. So I believe strongly that a leader does all the things that you said, has courage, has virtue and values, acceptance, brings the people up, never asks others to do what they wouldn't do themselves. But I really believe that a true leader listens twice as much as they talk. And then when they do talk, they talk and represent the people as well as themselves. So that's just one of the true values of a leader that I think is very important to speak to at this point in time. Okay. Anybody else before we move on? All right. With that, I think we've done our
Yep.
leadership activity, and our warm-up activity. Get you warmed up for the game. We're getting ready to play a game here. So, if you're a football player, you got to tell me you're a running back, wide receiver, defensive back, tight end, lineman. You got to let me know what position you're playing. But hopefully you're now ready to play. The game is here and we're going for a championship. We want to win this game, right? And we got to make sure that our mind and body and spirit is ready to fight the fight. So we are now getting ready to fight the fight. And with that, I'm going to turn, I think, to Casey, who's going to talk to us about since our last meeting. What has happened since our last meeting? Is that you, Casey?
That's Danielle.
That's me. That's me.
Oh, okay.
The referee.
Okay. Danielle, I'll let you have it. All the way in New Orleans. I know you got something to say.
We will get a chance to hear from a couple other folks as it relates to this item. We wanted to just spend a moment touching base on the discussion session that we had on Tuesday, and just what we covered in that conversation, and remind you all that while those are optional, they're a great opportunity to maybe go a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we don't always have a chance to engage fully in these conversations. So we'll have a few more of them, and certainly invite you to join those. For our inaugural optional discussion session, we spent some time engaging with a definition of racial equity, like racial equity as a lens that we employ, and then also what racial equity culture can mean in various contexts. And so we had a pretty rich and interesting discussion about how folks have both experienced a racial equity lens and what racial equity culture means to them, but also what are some of the challenges or trade-offs that come up when we think about or when we're employing racial equity as a lens and are trying to practice racial equity culture. The conversation is certainly not over, and so we want to continue to explore those concepts in particular in coming sessions. We also spent some time watching first a video on the historical context of the term Latino, Latinx, and Latine. And that also proved to be a really interesting discussion, particularly hearing about some of the maybe intergenerational or generational differences in how folks refer to themselves and what that means, including, as we discussed earlier, kind of intersectionality and the way that maybe gender, conceptions of gender align with this understanding of ethnicity as well. And so that was also a very rich and interesting discussion. And then we spent a little bit of time discussing why this shared language is important in the context of advancing this work for racial equity with SACOG. Anyone who was there on Tuesday, did you want to maybe share anything about, about the conversation, your experience, or invite your colleagues to join subsequent ones? Any reflections? Marco, are you going? You're on mute.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to deal with me if I put myself on mute. But anyway, so I was not, I had to leave the last time, so I was not part of that. But one thing that came to mind when you mentioned the Latino, Latinx, and all of that, I was in we took a lot of students about a year ago, 2 years ago, to Mexico City. Were hosted by the Foreign Relations Department in Mexico City. There was a lot of students that were all Mexican Latinos. And then they asked me to speak to the group. There was about 40, 50 students. They were all students. And so it was really interesting because immediately one of the students, when I told them the story that I had been very involved in the Chicano movement back in the 1970, 69, and I was a very radical anti-war activist. Immediately they asked me one question. So how do you feel about Latinx? I said, oh, okay. I said, look, one of the things that we did in the movement was to seek our identity and establish that identity to reaffirm what we felt we were. But that was, what, 5 decades ago? Okay. You have the same right to define yourselves in whatever you're doing and choose yourselves what it is you want to be called. And we should all respect that. And that's how I dealt with that question. It's an old Chicano.
I thank you so much for sharing that story, and it's it aligns with some of what we talked about, right? That self-identification and the empowerment that comes along with that. And so, one, thank you for transmitting that message to them. Then it's so important. But two, thank you for bringing it into this space. We probably have time for one more reflection from the group who joined us on Tuesday, if you have one. Not that maybe you don't want to follow that one. That was pretty good, but. Okay, well, hearing none. A lot of the rest of our conversation today is focused on how this working group can collaborate closely with SACOG staff to implement the REAP, the Racial Equity Action Plan. And so there has been progress between the last time we met and now, and we wanted to give an opportunity for a member of the SACOG staff to share, or members of both the working group and the SACOG staff to share some of their experiences in that. And then we'll wrap up with a question about how we can better support you all in connecting and supporting the implementation of this work. And so Renee, Handy, I want to hand it over to you to share a little bit about what you've been up to.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good afternoon, working group members. I'm really excited to share this. This is our summer internship program. This will be our first year. So at the beginning of the year, we had a goal to implement this internship program that was geared towards high school and college students that are new to the workforce. And it's specifically designed to develop skills and knowledge in local government. So we are looking for 2 interns to start in July, and that will last for about 6 weeks. As you can see here, we have a focus on every week, or 1 to 2 weeks, that will kind of develop those skills and knowledge specific to local government. We will reevaluate to see if we have a need for more interns next year, We, as a big success for the program, we have about 35 resumes, so that's super exciting. I wanted to give William Walker a big shout out because he helped develop this flyer and helped reach out to our networks to like really give this a good kickoff. So we're very excited. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the program.
Is there a capacity on the number of interns?
So we're just doing 2 this year just to see how it can go. And then next year, we're hoping to kind of increase it based off of how the program will go this year.
Okay.
But we are accepting resumes through July 14. Right now, like I said, we have a heavy amount, but I think that's a good problem.
Got it. I like that. Okay. 2. That's gonna be a competitive situation.
Yes, very, very competitive, but very exciting.
That is great.
One thing I wanted to highlight that I appreciate seeing is that it's a paid internship. We know that oftentimes internships, if they're unpaid, aren't accessible to everybody, right? And so creating some accessibility for folks to be able to participate in that while simultaneously being paid is a fantastic strategy for increasing equity in terms of programs like that. So I love to see that. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited to give them the skills, but on top of it, they get the compensation as well. So very, very exciting. And Shanice helped me with the program as well. So it's very exciting to see it in action.
Yeah, that's great.
Fantastic.
Okay.
And what's the
sorry,
timeline on that?
one more thing. I'm so sorry, I forgot one more thing. You might be hearing from me. I'm going to be reaching out to working group members to see if you would be interested in a meet and greet with the students. We think that would be very beneficial in the program. So I will be reaching out if you have availability. I would love to do the meet and greet with the students. Sorry, Chair Jennings, go ahead.
No, I was just looking at the timeline on that position and how long would they be employed?
They'll be employed for 6 weeks, so it's more of just a summer internship program. We are going to evaluate to see if that is something we can extend, but this was kind of our starting point.
Okay, that's good. Good. Okay. Danielle, any more since our last meeting?
Nope, I'm just curious before we move to discussing the regional indicators, if there's anything that would be supportive of the working group to be able to engage more closely with SACOG staff. Perhaps today we'll actually close some of those gaps. We're going to put faces to names. We're going to reveal who's working behind the curtain if you don't already know who those folks are. But really curious, is there anything that is outstanding right now for you that may be a barrier for engaging or supporting the implementation? And William, that's awesome that you were able to contribute to this. So that's a great success. But are there any other barriers that y'all want to lift up because we can maybe help close those or mitigate those?
Again, Lynette, I can't see everyone, so if you see hands, please call them.
I'm quiet, Chair Jennings, because I don't see hands. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Well, of course, you can always send by email, things that we can do to continue to support your engagement over time. And we also hope that leaving today, you'll feel super enthusiastic and excited about plugging in and have more clarity on how to do that. So with that, I believe it's time to hand it over to Garrett, who's going to talk us through a section on regional indicators. And we are going to spend about half the time with Q&A from you all. So make sure to think about those questions along the way. We do have a nice spacious amount of time for you to ask those and get answers to those, hopefully. So Garrett, I'll pass it off to you.
Well, thanks to Nell. And yeah, my item is about data and indicators. And I think maybe I might have just lost half of you, your eyes are glazing over, but maybe a few of you, your ears perked up, right? It's a very meaty item, and we just wanted to recognize that up front. We threw a lot of attachments at you that were quite lengthy. I think there were 3 attachments. And there's a lot to it, and we're trying to walk this fine balance of giving this exposure to what we've been doing from a data perspective that's not overwhelming, and we recognize that it's probably an impossible balance. We're asking for your input today and your guidance, but we also want to recognize this isn't the only opportunity for you to weigh in, and you're not the only group weighing in. and we're asking for your input at a variety of scales. And basically, we had the questions embedded in this item that's in the agenda. We might not have time to get to all of them. So before I jump into it, I did want to take the step back and maybe the framing for you all to be thinking about while I'm talking, and of course, please interrupt me at any point, is as I'm talking about what data we've been tracking at SACOG and how we're thinking about it and what we're looking at, I want you to be thinking about, from your perspective, from your community, from your organization, are there things that we're missing, right? In terms of what we're tracking, they should be tied somewhat to this work we're all doing collectively around the blueprint, around the built environment, around transportation, around our communities. The example I gave in another context was we could track the record of the Sacramento Kings. I'd be interested in that, or for Chair Jennings, maybe the Raiders, right? Maybe less relevant to the work we're talking about here today. So again, are there metrics around race, equity, inclusion, around disparities, right, that you think you're not seeing in this work? And if so, we should definitely think about how we can get at that. And as I said, it's a variety of indicators, but this is the REI working group. So I think in this context and in conversation today, we're really interested in hearing from your perspective if there's indicators or themes or topics related to race and equity and inclusion that are missing. So let me pull up my slides. I really didn't have them up at first because I wanted to see how many people stopped paying attention when I said the word data, and happy to share that no one stopped paying attention. We do have a couple slides to get through. As Danielle said, we want to spend most of the time having a conversation because this is a pretty meaty topic. We will make sure we have time to hear from the committee. SACOG does a lot of work on the data side. We collect a lot of different data and a lot of different topics. And we call that in this slide the monitoring, but you can just think about it as data collection. And we also think about how that data gets used, and we call it reporting. So again, we as the regional planning agency, that's one of our roles. We're not the only agency that does it, but we kind of operate at the scale that it makes sense for us to be doing some of these. And some of them we are best suited to because of the topics we look into. I'm going to talk briefly about how we've approached this in the past, and I'm going to talk about the new process and where hopefully your input will really be helpful. As I said, right, we collect a lot of info. What we've tended to do in the past is compile it all into this, what we call progress report. It's a PDF, it's static, it has a bunch of information, but it only comes out every few years. So for those of you that are tracking the very lengthy attachments, that's attachment A. We wanted to give you a flavor of what we've done in the past. And then I'm going to go through a couple just example indicators of what we've been tracking. This is just 4 of the 50 plus. And again, not necessarily to get at what each sort of metric is saying, but just kind of more get you at sort of like topical areas and kind of the questions where we're thinking about it. So don't be overly concerned about maybe the trends and be thinking more about kind of the questions we're asking. Again, these are just 4 of the handful, the great many you'll see in attachment A. So of course, we're really interested in understanding and putting out information about who we are as a region. So we put forward a lot of demographic information. The one you see on the screen, just some pretty standard population information. But you'll also see it's important in this work that we do to be thinking about how our region is is similar or different to other regions. And so in this metric, we bring forward a lot of information about what's going on in the rest of the state of California. So again, information about demographics, who we are as a region in terms of just not just population, but in terms of the different characteristics of that population. We do a lot of work thinking about our economy, right? What are sort of the growth engines, and is that economy working for all? So what you see on the screen is different sectors of our economy and how they've responded in different time periods. Something we do a lot in this area too, which is interesting, is we also try to think about how our region is comparing not just to those California regions you saw, you know, the San Franciscos, the LAs, the San Diegos of the world, but also other sort of mid-sized regions across the countries, the Indianapolises, the Charlottes, the Cincinnatis of the world, right? Because we understand that our economy is pretty different than the Bay Area or LA. And so we think a lot about how what we are doing in our sort of economic realm, how that might align with other sort of what we call mid-sized regions. And then of course, a lot about then thinking about our communities and you know, how they're working and who lives in them. And so we're calling that vibrant places, a lot about housing and development. Now, what we do in all of these categories is we try to think about, are there metrics that make sense to break out by race and ethnicity, and to break out by income category. So when I'm talking about these different categories, we don't have a equity category per se, because we think equity is embedded in all 4 of those. So you can see, for example, here's one example of an indicator that's thinking about what's the cost of housing broken down by race and ethnicity. And then finally, SACOG has a lot of transportation information. We have way more transportation indicators than probably anyone's interested in besides us. We have a lot of transportation stuff. And again, there's a lot of interesting things about how those intersect with those three first categories. So again, just a flavor of a couple of the types of indicators that we've been thinking about and we've been tracking for a long time and we present on. Don't maybe necessarily get too necessarily concerned about what's each indicator is saying, but again, maybe more of those broader themes and questions. We have then as the second piece of information for you as a committee, the best way we tried to do of getting all of those different things we've been looking at, hopefully in a more digestible format for you, because we recognize it's very hard of 50, 60 indicators. So that's attachment B. And I think maybe the first part of that, if you're glancing through, is it's maybe translating kind of the technical metrics into like, what is this asking? What is this telling us? And so that's that piece of information for you. All to say, that's what we've been doing to date. And again, if you're scanning through attachment, the progress report, attachment A, or these tables in attachment B, you'll see it's a pretty long list of different things we've been tracking. We are now kicking off a revamp of this approach. Half of it's maybe on the technical side. I'm going to focus less on it today, but most of it that I want to talk about today is on the process side. And as I sort of said in my opening, when the ask of you all today is to be thinking about, right, are there things that we're not tracking that we should? And that's what we want to get our heads around. And before I kind of go to one more piece of information before we break it back to discussions, something I should have said up front, hopefully it's clear, but if not, just to reiterate it. These things that we're talking about in this indicators report are very, top level region-wide indicators, things like population, housing, transportation, right? There's things about how our region, right, works. What you hear about the next item are indicators specific to SACOG, things about our procurement, things about our hiring, right? I just want to make sure that the distinction was clear between these two, items you're gonna hear back to back. This is very much about how SACOG can play a role in providing information to you as a working group, to our board, to our partners, and to the general public about how the region is tracking on these top level things. Of course, we think our work would influence it, but it's just a very small factor of these broader issues. Real quickly, as this may be a thought exercise that we did, is we try to think, since we're asking you all, right, are there areas that maybe we need to be thinking about that we're not? We thought, what are other areas doing in terms of their own sort of data collection and presentation? So we went and looked at all of the peers of the SACOGs of the world, the regional agencies, well, of the country, I should say, not of the world, the regional agencies around the country. In those peer groups, I talked about the mid-sized cities and then also our fellow California region. So basically the idea was, hey, these are other similar agencies, right? They probably have access to similar data sets, right? Are there things that they're doing that we're not? And that's your attachment C. It's sort of a complicated table, but it just shows us as the Sacramento region. And again, sort of check boxes on where we did. I just want to go through the couple slides that break down that table. Just, we found the results interesting, and maybe it'll help also sort of spur the first question we put to you all of if there's areas you think that we should be thinking more about and trying to find a way of tracking on a more consistent basis. So this sort of look at other agencies breaks it down into a slightly different sort of framing of sort of topical areas and then specific subtopics within them. And basically we put together a sort of a table. And if you have a indicator, right, that you're tracking, you get an X in that table. Before I show you the results, I think just it loses a little bit of nuance of, if you get a check, it's sort of a binary yes or no. It doesn't fully capture the breadth of, maybe there's real detail analysis within the population box that one agency is doing this, that one isn't. But it's a simple way of trying to make our sense of what 15, 20 other organizations are doing. So just as a thought exercise, I'll go through these real quick, and then we're going to take a step back and have a conversation as the committee. So we're going to be, as the Sacramento region, again, these aren't cities, these are regions. We're always going to be on the farthest left. It's sort of hard to see on the screen, but this is sort of just basic demographic information, right? What are we doing and what others are doing? And so you can see on the far left, right, the different topics. I'm just going to go through these one by one just to give you a sense of what we found when we looked at sort of fellow peer regions and what they're doing. So this is demographic information. This is housing type of information, right? is what's housing costs, right? What types of housing, what's sort of the vacancy rate, what's the foreclosure rate, so information types of that. Information on the economy, what type of jobs are in the economy, how do those jobs pay, are there different sectors, what's in terms of employment, unemployment, poverty, things like that. This one is maybe a broader one. It's maybe just didn't fit as well into some of the other categories, so we're just calling it other sort of social indicators, and you'll see it's quite broad. Of course, a clear takeaway, if the charts are making sense to you, is we as the SACOG data team have not been tracking many of these. And not everyone is, but a good number are tracking some of these other things. So things like homelessness, things like food access, things like language and health insurance. And so, that might be an interesting point of conversation for this committee is, are these things that rise to the top from your perspective of things we probably should be looking into? Transportation, as I said, more indicators here than you would ever care to know, but things about how people move around, what they can access, and also the safety side of things. And then finally, sort of the environment and how that environment also intersects with land use and development, the built environment. And again, fewer agencies maybe tracking this, and there's some variety of things they're putting forward, but it was one that we saw that other people were looking at that we wanted to think a little closer at. So again, I'm going to put these up for a second. Some of the questions that are interesting to us, I'm going to then put it down, because then I know sometimes when you just see a presentation, it's less conducive to a conversation. Reiterating the top level point, we threw a lot of information at you in the attachments. I threw a lot of information at you right now in the presentation. The sense you can, right, that you have your head around it, to weigh in on, and maybe it's even less important of is SACOG tracking it right now or not, but maybe it's also could be an important perspective of what you think is important for you in terms of your how you interact with the community and how you understand that perspective of what things we should be tracking at a regional level from a data that we can turn into indicators. So I'm stopping sharing. There's 3 questions. I'm starting with the first, and I'm going to pause because I know it's a lot I threw at you. I'm just going to repeat it one more time, right? From your perspective, are there things that should be tracked from an indicator's perspective that you haven't seen on that list? Or if there's a nuance or a new lens on the ones we already have that you think would be value to add in, and I will stop there.
I see you, Jesse.
There, I had to get that microphone working. I saw food access, but I didn't see food access as part of SACOG, and I think that access to food is a good indicator for the health of any of our communities. And I wasn't sure if you could speak to that, or if we could raise that in its value.
Yeah, perfect. I think for all of these, I'm taking notes of what you're weighing in. So the first answer is yes, that's something we're going to look closer into. And I should say too, we're going to be coming back to this working group, and this isn't the only source of input we're going to come back to you in the fall, and we're going to say, here's the indicator list where we landed. So food access, we will have, that will be something we bring forward back to this committee, right? We're going to say, yes, we're tracking it now, or we're going to say we tried to track it, but we couldn't because of X, Y, and Z. So anything that you bring up to me today, we're going to look into, and we're going to see how we can bring in. There are some technical challenges, and so I'm going to go back and look at those peers that you saw on that matrix. I think it was San Diego and maybe one other, and try to understand how they're doing it so we could replicate their methodology. But so for sure, food access will be something we'll look into.
Thank you.
Chair Jennings, Vice Chair Soon has his
Yes.
hand raised.
Oh, welcome, Chair Soon.
Thank you, Chair Jennings. Yeah, I was able to hear your comment in the previous one about what leadership means to folks. But I apologize for joining late. I had a conflict. In regards to this, I appreciate the presentation on all these leading indicators and metrics, but I wanted to maybe bring it back to the action plan. And I feel like if we as a group determine what's important to us from an action plan perspective, then that would govern what metrics are important to us and maybe indicators that we haven't thought about. For instance, if we decided our priority in this action plan is to, reduce the percentage of housing costs, right, but for our demographics, for the different demographics, or access to, you know, better transportation, which should then lead to better outcomes for employment and such. Those indicators would be subsequent to understanding. Lagvir, you're off mute, my friend. Director God, we can hear you. You're off mute, my friend. Anyway, so my thought is, as a group, I wonder if we shouldn't focus more on what outcomes we want out of the action plan, and then talk about indicators, because again, we could identify all kinds of things we could track, but then for what purpose would we be tracking them? So comment and a question, I guess, back to the group. Thank you.
Garrett, what do you think about that methodology?
Yeah, Director Zoom, that makes a ton of sense. I totally get nesting you as the policymakers in the working group, right? Weighing in on the importance. It would be pretty easy for us, like you said, to nest specific indicators into that action plan. So I think that the comment is well received. I think the timeline is we're trying to get our heads around kind of what's out there, but I think they can easily, with your direction, assuming the committee agrees, right, work together. Where again, we're going to be thinking about indicators on the back end. You're going to then be thinking about objectives and outcomes and priorities. But then we need a way as staff, right, to see those, right, reflected in that action plan. So I'll before we get to Director Guerrero, I think I need to just real quick ping my colleagues to understand the timeline on that action plan and when we think that's going to be sort of wrapped up.
Okay, if I may, thank you for that. So the action plan is ongoing right now. What the SACOG board has adopted, if you look through some of the dates, it said the furthest out date is 2025, but many of the dates are actually ongoing. This is a good point to maybe remind the working group of your charge and what it's rooted in. Your charge is to oversee the implementation of this action plan. And as you are watching and weighing in on how we are implementing it, if you see places where it needs to be adjusted, to make those recommendations to the board so that it can be updated with those adjustments. And the action plan, which includes multiple goals and a number of objectives to achieve those goals. All of those goals were identified through a lot of listening and learning from the working group and its prior formation, as well as many of our partners in the region, which includes some of you, to implement the vision and a racial equity statement of change and commitment. And so a couple of things I want to point out from that. So in that statement, it says, SACOG envisions a Sacramento region where race is no longer a predictor of life outcomes and outcomes for all groups are improved. And also SACOG has an obligation to reduce inequities through our work to ensure that safe, healthy, accessible, and inclusive opportunities are available to all residents of the 6-county region. So we took that vision, went through this process of working through, of listening to the working group and to other partners in the region to develop the action plan that is goals and activities to achieve those goals. And one of those goals is what Garrett's work is trying to help us to achieve. And that is related to monitoring how this region is doing in two ways. One of those is these, what Garrett is sharing with you is just the regional indicators or what's happening in the world that's different that we can try to influence, right? That in your policy decisions, in your investments that you at SACOG that you can try to influence. And there's also a piece of measuring that is just measuring the actual racial equity action plan implementation, which is the second item that you're going to focus on today. So that is looking at are we making progress towards the initial goals that have been set in the action plan? and the longer term, goal of race no longer being a predictor of life outcomes, Garrett's trying to get some feedback on the indicators that will help us there. I think what Vice Chair Suna said is a really it's really astute and comment, because there's obviously like, what's the connection between those things, and that is hopefully I've explained kind of the way that this is all laid out, and if with that information any of you have some particular feedback on that, we are very happy to receive that and to try to work with that to set up the measurement and monitoring that will help us to get towards short and long-term outcomes.
Got it. Got it. So that brings us back to Garrett's questions.
Martha, do you want to go?
Oh, sure. Just to also circle back with Darren Soon's comment, that yes, I understand trying to focus, but I also, Casey, thank you so much for the background, because I was going to ask that question, and it now, now I see as well why we're doing this. The one area, given today's decision by the Supreme Court, is education. And that's the one area I think we need to, there's multiple ways we can evaluate education. Like, we're looking at what are our job opportunities and what education levels do we need to have. Say, for example, I'm trying to expand on biotechnology, what education, do we need to build in the region opportunities so that they can fill those jobs? Otherwise, we're not going to be able to attract those industries in our region, for example, and it's not going to help economically for our constituents. So I'd like to enhance on what, manufacturing companies, what is it we'd like to attract to be able to help those that need to achieve and, their educational goals, and include that here. But looking at also influencing our local educational institutions so that we can include race as a component of admissions, because if not, I think we're going to just go back, to where those that only get the best education and can afford it are going to be able to be admitted into school. So I just want to add that component in if we can.
Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Martha. I agree on the education piece. And my question is, how can we look at the social justice, through the social justice lens at education, right? Because we've had a situation in Placer County and Auburn where there was an elementary school where it was a high Latino population that closed. And now these kids need to be bused or transported or find transportation to the next closest school, which is a hardship for them. So it has to do, we have to look at those kinds of things as well. And then my other question is on the on attachment C under environment, under climate, are you looking at pollution there as well? Because of course, we know that our populations are in high polluted areas, and wondering if that's a part of the climate box. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, great point. That's something we flagged too through the review of the climate indicators. That includes pollution to individual communities as well, the environmental justice overlay. So that's something like, as you see on the matrix, we're trying to figure out how we could do that. So thank you for bringing that one up.
I see Woody's hand up.
Thanks, Super Jennings. Yeah, if we're going to look into environmental factors as well, I think it would be helpful as we move forward to take into consideration, the high risk areas to climate change and to the vulnerabilities that are ever more present each year. Because if all this work is successful, and the valley floor is underwater and the foothills are a burn scar, it's not going to matter anyway. So I just be nice to take into consideration those high risk, vulnerable climate areas across the region as well. And I'm not sure how to do that, Garrett. I'll work with you offline to maybe figure out a way to do that.
Great. I mean.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Garrett, for the information. And you're right, it is a lot of it is a lot of information. I'm a data head, so I love data. So I appreciate it. One thing I would say is, as we look at this and we continue to refine it, is I think what I'm offering is maybe something adding to maybe some nuanced aspects of it, like in the area of economy that I'm learning is really trying to understand the experience of wealth of our residents. So that gets into like taxation, assets, debt ratio. I think it was mentioned in the area of economy around the burden of a percentage of income, and then how much of that goes to housing. And then it made me think about how are we defining wealth for our residents? So maybe that's something that we could tease a little bit into as well. Like how does SACOG see wealth for residents? Because wealth is not just about income, but it's also about being prosperous, having access to resources, healthcare, education, outdoor spaces, pollution, all of that. But how do we define wealth? And then what does that look like for communities of color? So there were two resources that I would offer that I have found to be very helpful. One of them is, and you probably are already aware of them. One is the Prosperity Scorecard. That also helps drill down to actual city. So you can see Sacramento's explore outcome measures in financial assets and income taxation, savings and assets. And so you can look at that, and they also break it down by race as well there. So that might be a helpful database to tap into. The other one that I would offer too is that I just recently came across is the Black Wealth Data Center. And they drill down even more. And what I like about the Black Wealth Data Center is that not only do they drill down, but they give you glossary and definitions, they give you methodology, they give you data sources, and they also compare the Black community to other communities of color as well. So you get a chance to see the comparison as well. So I'd offer that for the area of economy, and I'll think about the other areas, but drilling that down, because that may come into how, and I definitely appreciated Darren's, because I was thinking the same thing, like, if we're going to talk about what's missing, we've got to be able to relate it to what are we working on and what are we seeing out of the Race Equity Action Plan. But I think maybe looking at some of the nuances of the data and drilling down, we can get into more of those qualitative lived experiences, and it can help us identify those indicators as we refine the action plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. William Walker, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I didn't know if I saw it in the report on the workforce. Is there any indicator for the quality of jobs that are in the region, which would reflect wages as well as benefits? Because with that, you are able to gain assets, and certainly it would be an indicator of the prosperity of the region. The number of quality jobs are actually here.
Yeah, perfect. That's not something we've done, types of jobs and wages, but I don't think we've paired it with things like benefits. So I think that's a good thing that we need to roll up our sleeves and figure out how to do.
And we do have a definition for the Sacramento region from our workforce board, and you can go to our website and find that, or I can actually send it over to you.
Yeah, that's working together. I like that.
So we have about 5 more minutes left for this, and then we'll move to the next item. So Garrett, any?
Yeah, Chair Jennings, can I just pivot real quick? And again, thank you everyone so much. And Director Stewart too, I think your framing point's spot on. I just real quick, it's a shift, but since we have you all here, something we've heard, right, is it's great to put out these sort of data metrics, these leading indicators, but there's also the sort of lived experience side of things. There's the qualitative data. So this is a whole nother thing we could spend, the whole session on, but this is something we're trying to still learn about. So again, this doesn't have to be the only time in this conversation. I really appreciate everyone offering their resources, right? And so if you feel like you are in that space and you understand it, we'd be really, I think, benefit from maybe a follow-up one-on-one about maybe how you're thinking about sort of qualitative data and how that could fit a role in our regional reporting sort of program, because as you see from what we've done in the past, it's been very heavy on sort of the traditional metrics. So again, more of just an ask of if this is an area that you have some expertise on, we're eager to hear and learn from you.
Garrett, the other thing I heard clearly is that there's some data heads in the group that might be willing to come together on a less frequent basis to kind of talk about the things that we're talking about right now. So I think if, you can keep listening and hear who the data heads are. As a matter of fact, one of them's got their hands up right now. Me.
Yes, thank you. And Garrett, on that, I think, the qualitative piece, I think that's where there's going to be a great, that might take another session, because I think there's a great opportunity to collaborate with careholders and partners across the city that are doing and working on various aspects of the data, the economy, Black, closing the racial wealth gap, looking at educational attainment. That might be something to do, like an ecosystem map, and see what partners here and then that are connected to SACOG are working on that, and I'm sure are doing the same thing. So that could be a point of collaboration and intersection, especially with listening session, focus groups, community engagement strategies. That's where I think that in-person to person understanding those lived experiences could really help boost, but also de-silo our region at the same time and help us understand how we're working all towards the same goals.
Great. So Danielle, you said we had about how many more minutes for this section?
Just a couple, but Elisa, I noticed you had come off mute before. Did you want to chime in?
I just wanted to add about the jobs. How do you track and how could you possibly collect information when so many employers pay cash under the table, especially to undocumented communities? I don't know how you're going to do that because I'm not a data head, but I just wanted to bring that up as another point, is that a lot of our families are way below poverty level and they're getting cash and it's not documented anywhere.
Yeah, short answer is it's an extreme challenge, but it's a great point to raise. Is a lot of these data sources, right? We have to be very thoughtful when we use them, that we understand what they're tracking. So a lot of these on the job side are only tracking jobs that are tied to, say, a W-2 or something like that. So it's not the complete labor force. So I think part of it is also we need to make sure that when we're putting out metrics, like we can clearly sort of say, this is looking at this facet of the labor market. We'll look into sort of how we get to the full labor market, but I would guess it would be a challenge to get to those things you're talking about, Elisa.
So Garrett, I think we're getting ready to pivot, but if someone is late in the midnight hour coming up with an idea that they wish they had said something about earlier, what's the best way of getting in touch with you or getting that information to you?
Well, we'll probably be up at the midnight hour too, because that's what we think about data. So just, give us a call. No, joking. First of all, thank you so much for everyone. Yes, if you have more input, we recognize we throw a lot at you. And if you're like me, I actually do better of taking a step back and thinking about it. I would say just work through the committee, Lynette, right? And she can get that information out to us on the team, because I'm just one part of the many. But I have my follow-ups here, but like as Chair Jennings said, if you think about this more and you said, oh gosh, what about X, Y, or Z, or the way to do about it, please, if you send it to Lynette, she'll make sure it gets out to us.
All right.
Thanks, Garrett.
Yeah, thank you, Garrett. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pass it.
in my printer too. All right,
Okay.
Danielle, I'm gonna turn it over to you to take the last progress report that we're gonna talk about.
Okay, thank you so much. So Katie Bernetti, I'm going to hand it over to you. We have about 40-ish minutes between presentation and discussion to give a bit of a progress update on the implementation of the REAP thus far. So I'll hand it over to you and you can get us going.
Great, thank you so much, Danielle. Good afternoon, everyone, and my name is Katie Brunetti. I think I'm in the bottom of your square of 4 people up here in the YOLO room. So I'm going to talk about the REAP implementation progress and the tools that we're using internally to kind of track that progress. Just to point back to the REAP, this is an update on board practices objective 3A. So the overarching goal 3 is that the board maintains consistent engagement with the racial equity action plan implementation process. And then objective 3A is to formalize the process that the board will use to monitor the regional racial equity indicators and progress on the implementation of the REAP focus areas. So Garrett just spoke about the first part of that. So now I'm going to touch on the second part of that and provide an update on the internal monitoring and implementation progress of that objective 3A. The report I think it's the first attachment in your full packet that we've kind of put together for tracking progress on the implementation. And so we're using a spreadsheet internally that kind of rolls up into that report. The tracker that we've set up for staff is updated bi-monthly by the staff task lead. And then the information in that tracker is compiled into that report that you see in the attachment. The tracker was created as a way to monitor our progress on the implementation for each of the objectives in the 3 focus areas, which as a reminder are operations, programs, and board practices. So I want to take a minute to introduce our task leads for each of those 3 focus areas. So like Danielle said, you can put a face to a name for those that are here. I'll start with operations, and I think for operations, our task leads that are here are Renee, Eric, and myself. So if you can come on camera and wave, Renee and I are both in this room. And then for programs, I think we have Rosie, Alex, and Chris that are here. You can come off camera, say hello. And then for board practices, it would be Casey, Mia, Rosie, Garrett, and myself. Did I miss anyone that's here? I don't think so. So not all the task leads are available to be in this meeting, but I hope it's helpful to put faces to names for some people. And then I wanted to give special shout out to Jessica Lee, who helped develop the spreadsheet tracker and this report. And she did a lot of work on this. So I just wanted to give a special shout out to her. And she's also off camera or on camera here. And just to give you a short roadmap of what I'm going to talk about, first I'll share a brief update on the progress of implementation of our REAP tasks so far. And then I'll pause for any feedback from the working group on that progress. And then I'll share the samples of our tracking tool and the implementation report and ask for your feedback on any questions on that. The first page of the attachment gives a summary overview of the progress made thus far on the REAP implementation, so that the report I'm talking about has the orange cover page that should be the first attachment in your packet. So I'm just going to highlight a few things on the implementation from that report. So for operations, we've so far completed a demographic survey of all staff, and we actually had 100% participation in that. So that was great. And this will allow us to kind of keep a baseline as we track trends over time and things related to promotion and retention and all of those things across our workforce. As Renee spoke about earlier, we also launched our summer internship program that's for students over the age of 18. So if you have anyone that is interested, we're accepting applications now, and you have the flyer in your packet. And then lastly, we'll also hold our first in a series of staff trainings in August, and that'll be with a focus of psychological safety and mindfulness, and that will be for all SACOG staff. As far as the programs updates, we've kicked off our EEI program and held our first CBO roundtable discussion, which will help inform the framework of the funding program of EEI. We're also in the midst of visiting all 28 jurisdictions for strategic outreach for the 2025 blueprint, and developed a CBO grant program for CBOs to host their own blueprint outreach activities in their jurisdictions. We contracted with 12 CBOs from this program. And then we have also met or established contact with 3 of the 4 federally recognized tribes in our region. As far as board practices, we've updated our SACOG board handbook and held our first REI primer and refresher session for new and returning board members. We got great feedback from the surveys for those, and we'll continue to do those sessions annually. In April, we held a board meeting and workshop in Roseville, highlighting the community-based collaboratives, and we're working on a second workshop in the fall. So I'll pause for a minute and I'll take any feedback or questions on the current progress of implementation. And there'll also be time at the end for questions too.
Questions, any questions? You watching for me, Lynette, right?
I am watching, yes.
She's always watching. All right.
Chair Jennings, Ami
Yes.
has her hand raised.
Okay, I see now. Yeah,
Yes, thank you. This may be answered later on as well, but I was really curious about in terms of the training, if there was, and again, if this can be answered later, that's fine too. The training, is that done from in-house or is that from external training providers?
We're going to be using a consultant. So we'll be using Circle Up Education for that training. And then we're also building out, it's a series of, I think it'll be 4 total trainings that will kind of build on each other as kind of an introduction to staff that we'll do all throughout the fall and winter of this year. We don't have the consultants for the rest of them though, but that we'll use consultants.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? You see anyone, Lynette?
I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and I'm going to discuss our internal tools that we're using, and you see the report out from that, but I did want to share, I'll share it to the screen. This is a sample of the task tracker that Jessica created that we are using and staff to update bi-monthly. So we have a tracker for every task that's in the REAP. And so I just wanted you to kind of get an idea of the raw data that's coming into the report that you are seeing in your packet so that you kind of can put them together. So staff are completing these updates bi-monthly. So you'll see in the report, well, I'll go over the report too, but this is what's populating that stuff, and it allows staff to kind of update their progress, view progress on other tasks that are happening or that might be related. I know we've talked about which tasks are related to other ones, and then they can periodically check in on their action steps to see like maybe they've missed something and this is just kind of a reminder of that. So you'll see over here, we're doing these updates bi-monthly. They do line up with our meetings. I know you all don't have one in August, but you'll see another update in October from this spreadsheet. And then all of this information gets rolled up into what you have. So the report is kind of a way to quantitatively measure this progress, even though, as we've all talked about already, this is kind of a qualitative process in how you're sharing this information. So we've put a lot of work in how to join those two together into this report. And so let me share the report. I know you have it in front of you, but I'll go over a few things. Hang on. Sorry. I have too many windows open. There it is. So here's that report that you all have in your packet. So I just wanted to go over, so this first page is what I just went over, that's the progress on implementation. And then this third page kind of gives you an about what's happening, and then the terms used. So we put together a glossary of terms used in this so that everyone can kind of be on the same page and establish a consistent understanding of the language that we've used throughout the tracker. And you'll see up here, we created this one-time effort or establishing an ongoing practice, because as we were working through this, it looks like something's 100% complete, but it's something that is going to be ongoing. And we're going to do it every year, or it's something that we're going to build on. So these little, you'll see these in the report where they indicate whether it's an ongoing practice and a one-time effort. But then just so you kind of understand what you're looking at, I'll go through one of these goals just quickly so you can see. So operations goal 1 is to establish an inclusive workplace where all current and future employees feel they belong. So 1A, so this percentage bar here gives you an overall percentage on that whole goal. So this goal has objectives 1A through 1D. So this percentage is a percentage complete over the 4 different objectives. So it's not just looking at one, it's looking at the whole thing. So then in objective 1A, the actions is again a combined status and progress of all the actions listed in the REAP under that objective. So that'll give you, this progress is based on the actual, like some objectives have 4 actions, some have 7. So that will give you this. And it also points out the target start and target end date, so you can kind of see where we are in the progress. And then the measures and indicators, you'll see in this one, there's just one, but if you look at these other ones, it'll pull in all of the measures and indicators that are in the REAP and the task lead status on those. So you'll see this. So this one is achieved. We had it, like I said, we had 100% participation in the survey. And then this notes section is the bi-monthly update from staff. So every staff person, once they're updating the quantitative data, they're also doing a brief update so that you guys can see an actual narrative of what is happening in the objective and with the tasks. And then right here where the circular arrows are is where you'll see whether it's an ongoing or a one-time effort. So we've also shared this report before it went out to you guys, we shared it with a few of the external members of the working group to receive feedback and on the format and presentation of the report and how it reads to an external stakeholder. We received great feedback that we've implemented from the working group members that we've spoken with, and we would welcome any additional feedback, specifically kind of how it presents to stakeholders and the kind of information you see in it. Is it good enough for you to kind of track our progress? And just like Garrett had, we kind of have a few questions that we would like to focus on as we move into discussion. So I'll put those up. I'll pull them down in a little bit just because I know people like to see names and faces. So as part of the discussion, we'd like to kind of hear from you on these 3 questions. What feedback do you have on our REAP progress so far? Is there enough information in the report that we just went over to allow you to assess SACOG's progress on the REAP implementation? And what would make it more understandable or transparent for you and for the public? So I'll leave those up for a little bit more and then I'll take them down. But if anyone has any questions or feedback, I'm happy to take it now.
Should they go through Lynette in order to give the feedback, or is there another method that you prefer?
Yeah, so if you don't have feedback right now, or if you want to, I'm like Garrett too, I like to take in information and step back and process it. So if you want to take that time to look at the report or if you have any specific questions, you can go through Lynette and she can get that information to me or to Jessica.
But if there are any burning questions on your mind right now, or points that you want to make, now would be the time to do so.
I'll call out the first question just so looking at the just the narrative of the REAP progress so far. Do you have any feedback on the progress we've made? Any questions about that? Dr. Guerrero, I think you came off mute.
Yes.
Go ahead.
You know, initially when I read it, I think the little circle thing was like, I wasn't sure what that was. So I don't know. And let me check to see at the end if there's a legend. I didn't scroll all the way down yet. I was just going through. Is there like a legend, or is there a way to explain what the graphics mean up front so people can, if it's going to be put live somewhere, so that people can understand what that means?
Yeah, so it's on I think it's the third page. So it's the cover page and then.
Oh, establishing alcohol. Okay, right. I see. Okay, perfect. Is there a way to put that? I don't know. You have to go back and forth, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we can make updates, definitely.
Okay. Maybe just on the first line, a little underneath that, say ongoing, and then people from there can get it.
Okay. Yeah, that's great feedback.
If I make an observation on our progress so far. So I think what you'll see is there's been, if you dig into it, you'll see we've been making quite a bit of progress on the operation side. That a lot of that has to do with training, with when we're trying to recruit and bring people on board. So that's trying to set up the people infrastructure of SACOG to be able to work towards the goals in the action plan. And then we've also made some progress a lot on engagement and learning tasks. That is all setting up for the tasks that have not yet launched. But if you dig into that, you will see there is program evaluation, there's policy evaluation, there's identifying funding to continue a pilot program that Katie had mentioned, Engage, Empower, Implement, right? So those things are going to be coming along later. I know for our board members, those are probably things that you will be very, more, engaging a lot more in, because that is like what you do at SACOG. And so I want to just, maybe help to interpret this. And this is our first time sharing this with you, right? So we're trying to figure out, how do we help interpret the big picture of this? A lot of the implementation right now is trying to set us up to be able to do a lot of the program work, a lot of the external work that affects, SACOG's planning and, funding and the assistance and collaborations that we do with other organizations. If that's helpful.
Sorry, Chair Jennings, I really, really love this, tracking. I wish I could do this for all the programs that we try to implement in the city, so I know what's happening. This is really helpful. Thank you. I just wanted to give you that feedback.
Thank you.
And I agree with you. If we could do this on every program that we have in our cities, we would be able to serve a whole lot better. But sometimes not having these kind of updates really hinders us as far as where we are in the process and where we need to get to. So I couldn't agree more. Any other questions or points on this?
The question I have, Chair Jennings, is I might just be doing something wrong, but I was trying to click on when you have like the 12 organizations who receive money, or when you give updates, I was clicking on a link and not necessarily taken to a way to find out who received the funding. So it would be nice to make sure if you're giving an update and you want to put a link in there, that it's easily accessible for us to be able to see the progress immediately within a PDF file or something.
Thank you.
Anything else? Great feedback. Okay, Danielle, what do you think?
Yeah, so I believe we wanted to open up an opportunity for folks to get engaged with various components of the project in the next couple of months. And so we separated this into 3 focus areas: operations, programs, and board practices, which is kind of how we open this conversation. And so a bit of a call to action is that if you're interested in joining kind of an ad hoc working group or having some touch points between now and maybe the end of the summer, you have an opportunity to raise your hand. You can either let us know now or you can reach out after the fact. Casey, did you want to say anything else about that?
Sure, just to break down those categories into subjects that that might resonate with the expertise that you collectively have under operations. I think we are still doing some ongoing work on trying to design our recruitment and retention activities as well as training. So if you have the capacity and you want to work with us, we would love for you to raise your hand and share that, and we'll be reaching out to you. And I'll pause there. That's on operations. And you don't have to do it right now, but if you can always let Lynette know afterwards, after this meeting. In the programs focus area of the action plan, we are continuing to build on our community engagement activities. And so if you would like to provide some advice to us on community engagement, that's something, community engagement as well as nonprofit and community-based organization engagement and program evaluation. Those are things that we are going to be starting up or continuing. So that's something that we would love anyone who has capacity to engage on. And then under board practice, a lot of the board practice stuff, activities we are bringing to you, for example, the indicators and the report that Katie just walked through. In addition, policy evaluation is another thing that we will be trying to set up to bring information to you. So if you have an interest in, again, providing some advice on that, we would love to work with you.
So Casey, just to be sure, you're looking for those from this committee,
yes,
that want to go into those 3 areas of operation, programs, and board practices. You're not looking for like an intern that I have in my office that maybe has an area of expertise in that. You're looking for folks from this committee that could help in those areas, that have areas of expertise.
Yes, that is a very good thing to clarify, Chair. We are looking to this group. We had sent out a survey to everyone to ask if there are any areas that you would like to dig deeper on, and also, how much time you're willing to put into that, because we want to be very respectful of that. So I'm just reiterating the invitation here. This is a great time to do that. You won't be meeting again in this formal working group until October. So staff will be doing a lot of work, and we may reach out to you anyway, even if you don't raise your hand. But we wanted to provide the opportunity for you to dig in with us, roll up your sleeves and do some work.
Okay, I like that. I like that. So we can raise our hands now, or we can raise them later. Casey's going to be persistent, and she's going to be available when you want to raise your hand. So I will raise my hand for programs. I'd like to maybe take a stab at doing some of the programs and the nonprofit organizations and working in that area. And I'll get a little bit better understanding of all the different aspects of programs, but I know from the nonprofit standpoint, I know many of them, having worked in that area for the last 30 years.
Thank you so much.
Chair Jennings, we've got some other hands raised. Would you like me to just call on them?
Ooh, please do.
Okay. Director
Please.
Guerrero?
Thank you, Lynette. I wanted to see, is there a way we can, does it need to be only from the members of this group, or can we add another council member to participate? Like Councilmember Early is very good with data, and I was just wondering what you thought about that.
That would be wonderful. We would.
Okay.
Yes, we'd be happy to take. We'd be happy to take that expertise. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll ask her, and then I have to go track down that email that you sent. If you could send it again, that would be great. Thank you.
Certainly.
And then we have William Walker's hand raised.
Yeah, I would want to work with you on operations, number 2. Identifying, attracting, investing in, and retaining workforce, since I've worked in that area for quite some time.
Thank you. And I note that you are already working with us on that. So that's fantastic.
Yes, very exciting. Thank you for offering even more, William.
And then Maria Chacon-Nistet has their hand raised.
Yes, I believe I already volunteered for this, but if I didn't, if I missed that, I'd be happy to assist in the program area under community engagement.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I will. I want to acknowledge you did raise your hand for that. So thank you so much.
And Chair Jennings, I'm not seeing any other hands raised.
Okay. But I mean, they can raise their hands today, they can raise their hands later. They can call directly, right?
Yes.
We will take all volunteers. So we thank you.
Okay. Well, that's our last substantive item. Just a quick wrap up. We spent some time continuing to get to know each other by defining what leadership means to us, and so many great shares and characteristics and ways of being and showing up as a leader were shared. We gave you a summary of what's occurred since our last meeting, including our discussion session that we had on Tuesday. So keep an eye out for future scheduled discussion sessions. And if you have ideas about things that you'd like to sink your teeth into more deeply or expand upon, please send those along. It's the space that we can really create and intend to create with you in mind and your priorities in mind. Obviously, we covered regional indicators, so continue to chew on what was shared and bring forth any reflections that you have or suggestions that you have moving forward. And then super excited to see folks raise their hand on further implementation of this work. And so looking forward to seeing what we come back with when we meet again. And now I meant to hand it back over to you, Chair Jennings, to wrap us up.
Absolutely. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. I'm really happy to be a part of this working group and the expertise that we have here at the table. And each one of you, I just want to thank you for the time that you give us in making this happen. We are halfway through the first year of this working group. And as part of SACOG's listening and learning commitment, James and Casey will be reaching out next month to each of you for a short mid-year check-in to get your feedback on how has your experience been so far? You know, what do you think about this? Is this something that you really are engaged and involved and like it? And or are there some things that we could do better? So they'll be reaching out to get your feedback. And I encourage you to be honest and really let them know this is really working for you. It's something that benefits you as far as SACOG is concerned, but also something that benefits you personally and maybe within your own job. And then it's been mentioned earlier, our next meeting is going to be October the 26th. It's going to be from 3 to 5 p.m. as it stands right now, but keep a lookout for any changes as far as time is concerned. But I'm pretty certain, Casey, you can confirm this, that it's the 26th from 3 to 5 p.m.
That's right.
And I see her nodding, so you know, that's all I've got to say. You've given us a firm 2 hours of your time today, and I thank you. I really believe in my mind that time is the most important resource that we have. And so when people give you their time, they've given you the greatest gift that they can give. And so that's why I appreciate each one of you for the time that you're giving to the work that we're doing. So I wish you the best this weekend. Have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank
you, Chair Jennings. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, my brother.
Bye.